Hi, this is Lindsay, and you are listening to the Contents of Characters podcast. On this podcast, we talk about great content. Right now, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and you know what? Maybe for the next 2 years. Who knows? Because it's that great. We talk about characters such as Rebecca Bunch and Paula Proctor and Maya and Daryl and Yjo, and the list goes on. And I'm sure it's going to get out of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend at some point, but that's my jam right now, so... And then we talk about the contents of one's character, where really just try to highlight, some good that's being put out into the world, and hopefully shape the way you might listen to and watch and consume media, which is, with some principles, because that's the power you have as a viewer. And I realize that not everybody's gonna like to do that, but it would just, media has a powerful way of affecting us. And I think that the people who are making that media should be people that really make an effort in whatever aspects and ways they can to make the world a better place. So, blah, 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 blah. I am feeling I'm definitely feeling super connected to the world right now, and also maybe a little overwhelmed by it. This happens to me. I'm really upset about the Aziz Ansari. I am really upset about the Aziz Ansari thing. Mainly because I feel like I'm not getting a lot of, or seeing a lot of support. Like, there's a handful of women who tend to post on things like this, who are posting on things like this right now. And I just watched the Samantha Bee. So full disclosure, I record the intros after, sometimes, not always, after I record the podcast. But I watched the Samantha Bee talking about her little thing, which was trending. And it had 10,000 likes and 10,000 dislikes when I watched it. And I made the mistake of going into the comments, and there wasn't a ton of great comments. And so, I also think it's our job to do something supportive whenever someone like Samantha Bee comes out and says these things. If you believe these things, you need to show some support and show that our numbers are strong, and that, we don't want to fucking be violated and pushed and coerced. So I'm just going to get off my soapbox, and I'm going to just let you know, though, there's a really good chance that next week I'm going to be up on my soapbox. So, so the next thing you need to know is I did a tiny contents of characters, and I'll mark it in the notes below. And our crazy count is definitely crazy, so there's not going to be any leads to what we're going to talk about in the notes, but I will mark the time. And oh my God, I cannot wait to share the podcast that Cynthia and I are doing at Bunch at Lunch. Because you're going to fucking love it. You're just going to love it. I already know. We are feeling really good about it, because we can tell you a story, and the songs all deserve fucking awards. And so we're just really fucking excited about it. And this podcast is scattered. I've been sick. I've been sick for a long time. And I would really like to be better and not spend an hour cutting coughs out of my podcasts because I'm hacking up my lung. And then someday you'll get to find out that my voice is not as raspy as it is in every single one of these podcasts. But last thing that I've got to say, and then you'll get right into the ramblings that I have there, is I've decided to attempt to do interviews for, the off season. So if you are interested in doing an interview, I've got a little form that I think is simple. I can email it to you or message it to you or whatever, DM you. If you're interested, let me know. It's really, the goal of it is to really just talk about Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. To talk about Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and it's going to kind of be structured similar. So it's just going to be nerding out about the music, the characters, what you want for the future, and, maybe we'll do a little arguing and maybe we won't, but it's, all about, like, what is it you want to nerd out about this show? And come on and let's do it. And also, I'm going to ask you if you've got any people you want to celebrate the content of their character, but, if you don't, that's fine, because I got a long list and we can do this. So, anyhow, here's the show. I am going to say it's probably not going to be as fully fleshed out of an episode as a lot of episodes are, just because there's the episode that I'm doing with Bunch at Lunch with Cynthia, and I'm already behind. I've been very sick this week, so I've got like very little accomplished and probably had more to accomplish. So we're going to get through this. I'm going to just kind of point out different things that I thought were interesting, and then have a crazy count at the end. We're going to do a modified contents of characters. It's going to be kind of in the middle because it's going to talk about a certain therapy, and so we're going to have a little bit of that, but it's not going to be what we normally do, and it is not someone famous. So let's get started. In episode 307, Chris is talking to Josh at the bar, and he's talking about his transition into manhood, and he says, "My armpits are starting to smell like armpits." Well, I don't think that it's like, I think it's a little foreshadowing to let us know that when Rebecca starts talking about sniffing these sweatshirts or t-shirts or whatever the fuck she's sniffing, she's taking in these pheromones and falling in love or falling in lust, but it's a very biological reaction, and it's sort of this feeling that happens to her, which is very relatable, of being with a person and loving the way they smell. Especially for women, our olfactory senses are very tied into love-ish stuff. Perhaps I'm taking this a little too far, but I kind of am looking at it like, your smells and things start to change during puberty, and this is when you start falling in love for the first time, and you start forming a lot of your behaviors and your ideas about love start manifesting. And I think that this little armpit sort of nuggets or kernels, these armpit kernels, I fucking love that. These armpit kernels are really talking about like the biology of love and not necessarily healthy love. And so I just kind of like that we've got like the beginnings of a thread that could kind of exist in the next couple of episodes, talking about how what we feel or what we respond to isn't always necessarily what's best for us. So on that note, she's sniffing these sweatshirts, and she's telling Dr. Dam that she just loves him so much, and she just wants to have that feeling that she has whenever glitter explodes inside of her. And then she's like, oh shit. And she said it many a times about glitter exploding inside of her. So we can all agree that for Rebecca, glitter is a metaphor for love. But I think that it is also a metaphor for destruction. And so maybe it's a metaphor for unhealthy love. When her and Greg are walking, and I have to give credit to Cynthia at Bunch at Lunch because this is something we kind of like discovered together. So in episode 104, which we were watching to gather more context about the song Settle For Me, Rebecca and Greg are talking about how she used to send cards to her dad and she would decorate them in glitter. And Greg says, he sounds like a shitty dad. And it sounds like he deserved glitter. Glitter is messy. And glitter gets all over the place. And I can think of a lot of other things that glitter is very fucking annoying about. Especially like when it's fucking stuck on your eyelid or something and you can kind of see it, but you can never get it off. Anyway, so I think that this metaphor for glitter is and maybe we wouldn't have noticed it so much if we hadn't just watched episode 308, where, you know, she's sniffing the shirt and trying to, you know, she's not actually sniffing a shirt. She's pretending to sniff a shirt. And she wants to feel that feeling like glitter is exploding inside of her. And then it even flashbacks to where she sees, you know, her saying that, you know, Josh made her feel like glitter was exploding inside of her. And does a Josh Nathaniel montage. So I think this glitter idea that I feel like, I'm sure there's some of you out there so much smarter than me that are like, yeah, we knew that for a long time. It just felt like this really girly way of, honestly, I even kind of just thought it was a little weird, like, just a frilly way of saying, she's in love, I'm in love. I should not even try that, ever, with or without a cold. So, gotten myself discombobulated, in a weird way, darling, it's fate. I feel like Nathaniel and Rebecca, like, they see something in the other person that they want. Like, maybe Rebecca wants something like, do I want to say boring here? Maybe Rebecca wants something like a non-tumultuous relationship and has this feeling that maybe Nathaniel can give it to her, but also Nathaniel's there and wants her. And so he's able to fill this void for her and take a place of a lot of stuff that maybe she doesn't necessarily want to look at. And Nathaniel says that he clearly wants Rebecca to, you know, help him be the kind of person who can look at a homeless person in the eyes. Well, let me just be preachy McPreacherson. If you're not homeless, you're fortunate. There's really, no one has granted you the power to judge someone else. So treat everyone like they're human. It's not that hard. Just do it. Okay? And forgive yourself when you don't and just do better the next time, okay? Okay. But Rebecca's like, I want to go to Raging Water. And so it's like this idea of fitting into what a relationship might supposed to look like. It's like she just wants to have fun, and he's fitting into like a sort of stereotype of what we see with rich guys in movies. Like, this might as well be Pretty Woman. He's like, I'm gonna take you out to a really fancy dinner. We're gonna make a schlep. Like, no, it's not exciting. Like, it's not wanting to share your world, and it's just different. It doesn't excite me, anyhow. But I think when she says this about Raging Waters, because she's so desperately wanting to be in love with him, she just kind of ignores the fact that, like, she wanted to do something that was outside of his comfort zone, but that he didn't have any problems dismissing whatsoever. And so I don't quite feel like they're a great fit, but I certainly don't think that her and Josh are a good fit either, but I do think that she was able to have fun with Josh, and she was able to have fun with Greg. And those components of those two relationships are really important when we look for what Rebecca needs in a relationship with herself, because she doesn't tend to have a lot of fun. For it seems to me like, you know, when her and Paula went to Spiders, she's just like, oh, well, no, We don't get to do my scheming ploy. Like, I don't want to hang out with you and make the best of it. You know? Aside from going and hanging out with Paula's dad, I don't feel like she's done a lot of, like, having fun for fun's sake. And that might be what she wants to do. And it might be what she needs to do for herself right now. I'm in love. Okay. Point number whatever. I have always assumed that Josh and Valencia broke up when Josh went to New York. So for me, in this episode, when he's talking to Lourdes, and he says stuff about how, you know, things weren't that great when he got back from New York with him and Valencia because he was with Rebecca, like, that tells me that they were together, or it shifts it enough that I feel like I can no longer assume they weren't together. And that just kind of drastically changes who Josh and Valencia are in a way. Had they really had an on-again, off-again relationship? You know, now I'm not so sure. So now we're going to talk about DBT, which is dialectical behavior therapy. I said that correct. Dialectical behavior therapy, henceforth known as DBT, so I don't have to wonder if I'm saying it correct every time, which is the recommended course of treatment for borderline personality disorder. Now, I had known of DBT before this. It's not just used for borderline personality disorder. It's used for other things, namely, like, if you're having a lot of self-harm issues. That's one of the places that I really want to kind of talk about borderline personality disorder. No, that's one of the places that I really want to kind of talk about what it might look like if you have borderline personality disorder. And so I found a podcast called Jedi Council under Geek Therapy Network, and it's a grad student, and I believe the other person has been in the field for a while, and maybe not a long time, is newer to the field, but what they do is they take characters or shows and they kind of break down what mental illness your character might be dealing with, or a character might be dealing with, and talk about how it's realistic or not realistic, and some of the things the show did well, and other things that we might need to know about it to better understand these diagnoses that are out there. It's a really great way to break down stigma. Someone had mentioned to them, more than someone, but people close to them were mentioning to them that they really have to do an episode on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. And the one who's been in the field a little longer, she had seen all of season 1 and all of season 2, and then watched the diagnosis episode. So kind of skipped the suicidal episode. And then the guy had watched like the first couple of episodes of the series. And so they came to it with very different perspectives, and they weren't, coming at it as being these huge fans, but they did so much singing praises of the show and the show writers and creators and Rebecca. And I remember the grad student, he was just kind of shocked whenever the girl said, they went through all the diagnostic criteria in the DSM-5 and showed examples of this. And so they were kind of talking about other examples that maybe they had seen. And one of the examples that he brought up, because again, he'd only seen the first couple of episodes, which I never really thought of. Like, I think when you watch the first season, especially the first time you watch the first season, it's a very tongue-in-cheek. Everything is, a little over the top, and it might even be an issue I'm still kind of having, is like, what is the overall tone of this entire series? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure, because it's definitely real and fantastical at the same time. And so I don't think we're going to know that till it's all said and done. But he had talked about when her and Valencia go out and, she sings the song where she's like, I want to wear your skin and then have you tell me I look pretty in your skin. And she dresses up just like her, about how this fitting into one of the diagnostic criteria of having an unstable, unstable sense of identity. And, I never would have looked at that so telling in the first, or really even the second episode. First or even the second season, and I don't think most people would if they're watching the show. Like, there was just such a, we were in fantasy land at that point, complete fantasy land. And so another thing that this show talked about was how there is a recommended course of treatment for those with borderline personality disorder. And it is what I think they're doing in the show, although I couldn't tell you 100%. And that's called DBT. And it was created by a woman named Marsha M. Linehan. I think I'm saying that correct. And they talked a great deal about her, and they totally had a lot of respect for her. But the part that made me maybe the most excited about Marsha M. Linehan is that once she had gotten some notoriety in her career, she came out as having had severe suicidal tendencies and thoughts, and maybe an attempt, I don't know, quote me on that, when she was younger. And that, she had kind of developed this approach to, like, help people, specifically people who were suicidal. And another thing they go on to talk about in the Jedi Council is that a lot of times people don't want to study or research people who are suicidal for, a number of reasons. And one of them is probably stability, would be my guess. Like, it would make it hard to keep your research numbers on point. But she found, like, like, people needed to trust her. And so, she would tell them this, but, like, the thing that they got out of it, and that they wanted the most out of it, and I can certainly remember asking my therapist questions that are personal, because I want to know, like, if I want to know that that person believes this, and that I can have the life that they have, that I can have it together as much as they have it together. And so that's kind of like the main reason she cites for coming out and saying that. And apparently it's very odd for people higher up in the psychological, and it's the psychology profession to do that, which really seems very troublesome for me. Just like, come on, like, no wonder there's so much stigma. If you guys are too afraid to come out, then who's going to? So I can't tell you a ton about DBT. I had heard about it before this show and before listening to the Jedi Council. What I can tell you is I'm losing my page. I don't want to get these things wrong. You know what I'm saying? You feel me, yo? So it's a pretty complex model. It's not just like a workbook. Maybe it's not going and buying a bunch of workbooks like Rebecca did, but it has different components. And the first one is mindfulness, which, we see that they're really talking about a lot, the show right now. And the other one is just, there's four different parts to it. There's multiple components. Is distress tolerance, so that's learning to live with stuff that's not makes you uncomfortable. Emotional regulation. I don't know, I have to learn to regulate my emotions, so I'll let you know when I know. No, I really don't know enough about that section to say anything. And then there's interpersonal effectiveness, and so I think one of the things they talked about in the show is, like, being able to communicate your wants and needs and also set boundaries. And so when you do DBT, you go to group therapy, you do individual therapy, and you'll do, like, role playing and all kinds of different stuff in therapy. And then the therapist go to other therapists that are doing DBT so that they have a network of support. And then they also always have someone on call, and you learn new skills that you can use to work through your issues, or, places where you might have gotten stuck before. And then, after you've tried it a couple of times, then you are supposed to call whoever's on call to try to work out a new approach that might be better for you. So it's a very, like, all-encompassing kind of therapy, which you don't hear a lot about, and I'm really just kind of excited to see what happens on the show with it. And I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. I am going to bring up one more thing about the Jedi Council once we get into the crazy count, which we were almost into. But I do want to say for Marsha M. Linehan, you're going to be our contents of characters person for being brave enough to come out about your diagnosis and help more people in a field where I think a lot of people that go to therapy, at least a lot I've talked to, we expect our therapist to have had problems and to have worked on them, because we need to know that, we need to know there's hope. And the show makes that clear, and I think she makes that clear, and she seemed very humble from listening to the Jedi Council podcast. So our contents of character is the contents of Marsha N. Lineham's character. It's very relevant. I know she's not at the Golden Globes, but I think that's a really powerful move on her part. We're going to do the crazy count, and I have to tell you guys, this is the very first crazy count that it's 0. It's 0. That's right. Lorda says, "Get your ass out of my house." Daryl says, what the fuck? Daryl said a lot of shatanka. We'll just leave it at that. He's got some good sperm shatanka. But in terms of actually saying the word crazy, it doesn't come up once. I thought Nathaniel said it to Rebecca when he's like, "That's crazy that you like me," but he said it's great that you like me, or something like that. And so what I did is I've decided to do the crazy bad count, because I noticed that the word bad was mentioned an awful lot. And so this is going to be a slight departure, but I think it's all about like self-worth and realizing that you're valuable. And so the word is used an awful lot. Okay, it is directly said 7 times. It is indirectly said 6 times, like not good or something like that. And then we have a couple of other things that we're going to throw in there are all of Rebecca talking to George, period. But Rebecca mimicking killing herself and forcing George to be her suicide buddy. And then also there's a couple of other mentions that are a little bit. But so let's start at the beginning of the episode where Rebecca's talking about, her sniffing habits. And she says, "Is it bad? Please tell me it's not bad. It feels so good, but is it bad?" And, he never says that it's a bad thing, but then, she does her Superman pose and shows off her shirt and says, "Is it bad that I'm wearing this?" And he says, "Oh, it's not good." So, I think it's like, on some level, she recognizes that this is part of her patterns, even though we're going to see her go into denial about it as she gets further into her plans. But I think there is just a sense of, I'm recognizing this. I don't really know what to call it. I'm a bad person. Is this it's bad. I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm getting an F in life right now. Paula Proctor says, gets the whore book. Was it the whore book? Daryl's like, "Well, I've never noticed all of these bad things before." So it's just like, judging people, which Paula's got an issue with. She needs to work on that. She really needs to work on that. And then Paula's got, like asshole-ish backhand comment ever, which is like, she says that she thinks Daryl will be a good parent because the first time she saw him with Madison, she said, "Oh, that's what he's good at." I'm like, I love you, Paula, but fuck off, man. Like, your meanness is not cool. Your meanness is not cool, and Mrs. Hernandez meanness is not cool, and everybody being mean to George is not cool. Not fucking cool. And then we get the spank bank on the phone, and Daryl asks if his guy stuff is bad. So, I think that's just sort of an extension of, like, especially when you think of men, and they tend to be virile. They tend to have good sperm for a long time, and so I kind of thought this was maybe an interesting line. I guess I can't speak for men. I don't know how much they worry about that and what have you. But I thought that this vulnerable side of Daryl, like, extending into, not just his choices, but part of who he is. Is it bad? George tells Rebecca that, being a stalker and manipulating him and Nathaniel and his whole family is probably not a good idea. When Loris first walks into the room with Josh, she sees that he hasn't done anything. She said, well, this is not great. Oh, my bad. So Daryl says something about his guy stuff being bad to Paula first. And then whenever they get on the phone with the spank bank, he asks if his swimmers are no good and is it bad. So still the same stuff. And then I'm putting this in here because I want to, and it's my podcast. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-da-ba. Josh's singing was so bad, which I think is really cute because I think with Rebecca being a bad singer and Josh now knowing that Josh is a bad singer, I don't know. I think it's super cute because it's easy to idealize their abilities and talents because we know that they're actually good at this stuff, but like to have their characters have some of these flaws or non-perfection parts of themselves that we have is fun. Paula calls number 45H765. I'm not sure if that's correct. Paula calls her a horrible person, which I think is a little bit telling of Paula. 456H76 is a little bit telling of, Paula and her meddling, like she needs to go be on Scooby-Doo with this shit. Can you tell I'm a little just annoyed with everybody being so bad? So after Josh finally cleans his room and Lourdes comes in there, she says, "Are you feeling better?" And he says, "I feel terrible." And I don't know, I like that one because I feel like it's sort of like, even if he's waiting until he's 29 to grow up or whatever, like, you worship the idea of being an adult when you're younger, or most of us do, and this illusion of freedom that it looks like you have when you're a kid, and then you get older and you're like, okay, you're like Josh, and you're like, there's too much freedom. I don't know what to do with myself here. I'm gonna have to figure out a lot of things on my own, and it's hard and it's difficult, and I'm gonna do it, but it's hard and it's difficult. And then whenever I can't remember if they're in group or talking, but there's another time that Dr. Dam tells Rebecca that it's not a good idea. And that's in here, and I don't have any notes beside it, so we're just going to assume that it's nothing to... And I do apologize for this not being the most interesting or well thought out podcast that I've done. So that kind of leaves us with the end of the crazy count, which we're going to focus on Rebecca and her threatening to kill herself. And I don't know how it affected everyone else. But for me, like, it made me really icky, angry, frustrated, and I think because, there's so many of us that this is such a personal issue to, like, we don't want to see jokes made about it. And I felt like the writers were making jokes about it. And then when I listened to the Jedi Council podcast, I kind of got a little bit of a perspective on it. Or I don't feel icky when she does it, because I've watched it several times, and every time I don't like it. But one of the things that stood out for, and Rebecca's been called a lot, is dramatic. And so that's part of the things they talk about whenever they go through the criteria of her diagnosis. And so in the podcast, they talked about how a lot of folks who would threaten suicide frequently said that they would do it because they didn't know how to... I'm probably not going to phrase this in the most friendly way, so please forgive me, that they were trying to do their best to get what they wanted. And I don't think that that necessarily means, in Rebecca's case, like, I've got to, find him his little sister or convince his dad to love him or whatever. I don't think it's just that as much as it's a lack of a skill set. And I don't think if you have that skill set, it's easy to overlook it and realize that, not everyone does. And so while the way that suicide could look before or suicidal ideation or warning signs, or the act itself has a lot of ways that it can look. And it's not like a lot of people are just, yelling fire in a theater. But there's I guess what I'm trying to say is it feels to me like there's this way that we all kind of run up against walls in one way or another in our life. And we feel hopeless, but we don't feel hopeless about everything in our life. We just feel hopeless about that one little thing. And so it comes off to me like, I have this over George. I can control George with this. I'm going to use this. And part of the DBT specifically works with that and how to build in skills so that you don't threaten suicide for the intention of getting what you want. And I hope that I didn't do that any disservice, but I want to, I guess, bring down, like, man, Rebecca's our girl, and we're with her through thick or thin, but I'm a little angry with everybody in the show right now. To be quite honest, I think I'm really pissed off at a lot of people. I mean, I'm pissed off that I haven't seen a lot of Heather or Valencia. I'm pissed off that Mrs. Hernandez is a bitch. In my head, she was not a bitch, and I'm not happy about it. I'm pissed off that George gets picked on all the fucking time. Like, he's a sweet guy. We can tell he's got a good heart. I'm pissed off that Nathaniel hasn't done a lot of growth. Part of it, I think, is just having all the time, the literal time that has passed on the show, and not being able to watch these like consecutively as if they were, we're not being able to binge watch it so that we see the growth a little bit more. I still have faith in the writers, but I'm feeling pretty painted into a fucking corner right now. Okay, so I am pissed off. I am. But like I said, I have a lot of faith in Aline, and I have a lot of faith in Rachel. I just, I guess what I could say here is I've been burned, right? Like, you've been burned. There's been a lot of good shows that fuck you over because they don't love their characters, or the studio this, or the what the fuck ever happens. They get tired or bored. I don't really know. And I don't feel that way about Aline and Rachel, but I want to see the diversity represented. At the end of the day, that's what it boils down to. Like, I want to see the diversity represented, and I want to see the tropes continuing to be smashed. And so, let's take care of George. And I can't put my finger on what bothers me about Mrs. Hernandez, but it really, like, I need to know why she's being a bitch. Just like I needed to know why she was being silent. And I feel like, so they didn't really solve a problem. Like, they created one, and I want it solved. And so I guess maybe there's a lot of shit that needs to be resolved, and we're at that part of the season where that's how you feel. And you're like, we've had a very sad climax, and now we're waiting on the inevitable cliffhanger. And I hope it's not at a real cliff this time. You can find me at Contents of Characters, plural, not possessive, on Facebook and on email. On Twitter, you can find me at Same Size Spoons. You can also find Cynthia on Twitter at bunch lunch. Or you can find her at Facebook. I think it's bunch at lunch there. And our new podcast, our new episode, our new whatever the hell we're doing, will be out pretty soon. So we're shooting to have it out before 3:10. So, stay tuned or whatever. You can also find me at GirlieKick, GirlieKick, on Twitter. I'm kind of trying to switch over to using same size spoons and don't really know how to go about it. Also, if you want to participate in the off-season fucking football or something, if you want to do that, just get in touch with me. I will be sharing stuff, but that'll be a little bit closer to the finale. And, anyway, I would love to talk to you about this, and I feel like everybody's got a really cool way to sign off on their podcast, and maybe there needs to be a master class on this, and so